Sarah Murray begins our coverage with the very latest on these new charges, Sarah, out of seemingly nowhere. What do we know?
Yeah, John, I mean, I think obviously the biggest deal in this is Donald Trump is already facing several charges. Now he's facing several more. One of them is another willful retention of documents charge. It's related to that very sensitive Iran document that we've talked about before that he showed to people in a meeting. We'll talk more about that in a second. But the other ones are related to what prosecutors say is this alleged scheme to try to delete surveillance video. Those are altering, destroying, mutilating, or concealing an object, and corruptly altering, destroying, mutilating, or concealing a document, record, or other object. And as they lay it out in the indictment, essentially, there's this new aide that we're hearing of, Carlos de Oliveira, who is now a defendant in this case, who Trump appears to tap as part of this scheme to try to delete the surveillance video. It's after the government has been to Mar-a-Lago, they've subpoenaed him to return all documents of classification markings, and when they go to pick it up, they notice that there are these surveillance cameras outside of the storage room where these documents are being kept. They subpoena the Trump Organization for these surveillance videos. So after that subpoena, it's late June 2022, and De Oliveira is talking to another Trump employee about the surveillance footage. And according to the indictment, he asked this other Trump employee how many days this server retains the footage. The employee says it's 45 days. De Oliveira then goes to the Trump employee and says, you know, the boss wants the server deleted. And he asks, what are we going to do? So that's really the heart of the scheme to try to delete this surveillance footage that is new in this indictment. But let's go back to that additional willful retention of documents charge, because this is a document we've talked a lot about. Donald Trump talked about it in a meeting he had in July of 2021 at Bedminster with folks who are writing a book about Mark Meadows. Take a listen to how Donald Trump talked about that document at the time.
This was the Defense Department and him. Wow. We looked at some. This was him. This wasn't done by me. This was him. All sorts of stuff. It's pages long. Look. Wait a minute. Let's see here.
Yeah.
I just found. Isn't that amazing? This totally wins my case, you know. Except it is like highly confidential.
Yeah.
And John, this is notable because since the first version of this indictment came out, since that tape came out, Trump has said he had no document. It was all bravado. The government making clear in this new indictment that was not the case.
All right, as we said, a big development amidst so many others. Sarah Murray, thank you for bringing us up to speed on this. I expect we'll be speaking to you again soon. Thank you. Rahel?
All right, John, let's go over now what we know about this new defendant. Right now, it's not a lot. Carlos de Oliveira, as we said, is his name, and he's the property manager at Mar-a-Lago. He was previously a valet there. We know that he's 56 years old, and he's now accused of helping move boxes of documents after the Justice Department first subpoenaed the former president. This happened in May of last year. De Oliveira spoke with the FBI earlier this year in January, and that's when investigators say he lied about helping or knowing about moving the boxes. Well, he has now been charged with conspiracy to obstruct justice, destroying or concealing a document, record, or other object, and making false statements. Now, we should say that CNN has reached out to his lawyer, John Irving. We have not heard back, but Irving is among the lawyers whose firm received nearly $200,000 in payments for legal services from Donald Trump's Save America PAC. De Oliveira is scheduled to be arraigned in federal court in Miami, and John, that is expected to happen this Monday. So many more things to watch.
That's right. We'll be watching that. Okay, with us now, former federal prosecutor Renato Mariotti and chief law enforcement and intelligence analyst John Miller. Renato, let me just start with you. What's different this morning than was yesterday? Yes, Donald Trump faces these additional charges, but what, if anything, about these charges makes his legal predicament different?
Well, one thing, John, is they now have found the document that was being referred to in that recording we just heard. I think that's important. Ultimately, that is some of the best evidence that Jack Smith has. It's evidence that makes it clear that Trump admits that the document wasn't declassified. We now know in the indictment that document was top secret. He's going to be able to show that document to the jury. I think that's important. And look, trying to delete and destroy surveillance footage, that is very explosive, and it's just going to be hard to explain away. All of the stuff about classified documents for a lot of people might be hard to get their heads around, but it's very hard for me to believe that jurors are going to not be able to understand that when you're deleting footage, when the FBI is investigating you, that means you've done something wrong.
And Renato, stand by for a moment. I want to bring in John Miller into this conversation. John, just the pure amount of investigation that went into this, thinking about potentially putting this in front of a jury when you have so much audio, photos, surveillance. I mean, in terms of the prosecutors being able to say, hey, don't even just listen to what we're telling you he did. We can actually show, you can hear this for yourself. You can see this for yourself. I mean, talk about how powerful that is potentially for the prosecutors.
Well, the timeline that was just laid out on this broadcast really tells a story. But if you dig just one layer deeper, the original indictment's focus was, first, you have these documents, they shouldn't be there, they shouldn't be in your possession. The second piece is the obstruction, which is when we demanded these documents back, we see on videotape people move them around. So you're trying to hide them, and you lied to your lawyer about it, who made false representations to us because he believed it to be true. But this is a layer deeper, because when you bring a charge that says that multiple people conspired, allegedly on instructions from Donald Trump, to not just obstruct justice by moving the things around, but then try to find and delete the videos that showed them moving them around, you are in a new zone here, because you have an obstruction of justice being committed to conceal the original obstruction of justice charge.
Is it an obstruction on top of another obstruction?
It's an obstruction of an obstruction. And, that really kind of fills out in this superseding indictment the conspiracy where Donald Trump reached deliberately past his lawyers, who presumably would have said, you can't do this, and literally to the lowest levels of the organization, people who might be expendable, his valet, the head of maintenance, and said, take care of these things. There's a reason he bypassed all those attorneys.
Does it get to double secret probation? Obstruction of justice, I think, is a form of double secret probation. Renato, does that get to consciousness of guilt? Does it affect some of the other aspects of the case?
I think it does. I think, first of all, it's going to affect the evidence that can be introduced under the rules of evidence. A lot more statements, I think, are going to come in. But I think importantly, I think ultimately at the end of the day, John, that jurors, when they look at a case like this or any serious case, what they're really interested in is, was the defendant in on it? Was he doing something illegal, wrong? And for someone like Donald Trump, who was the president of the United States, he's going to be trying to argue that he thought what he was doing was fine and right all along. This is something that everybody knows is not okay. Everyone knows is illegal. And I think that's why it's a very powerful piece of evidence. I can see why prosecutors were willing to even risk delay in the case in order to add it.
Renato, let me ask, do you think that the special counsel's office likely knew that this was potentially coming a few weeks ago when they pushed for that December, which a lot of people said was a very ambitious start date? Do you think they had this in the back of their minds? And I wonder sort of how that plays in terms of the ultimate start date.
Great question. I actually think that this superseding indictment represents a tactical call by Jack Smith that he does not think that he's going to be able to speed this trial out, and get it done before the election. So he made a decision that he might as well have all of his bullets in his gun. In other words, this is not something you do if you're trying to get this done quickly before the election. I think he took his shot at that, and that did not work. Aileen Cannon said, no, we're going to do this in May. Realistically, I think any experienced criminal defense attorney knows not hard to push a May trial a few months or more. And so practically speaking, that was very remote possibility. And here he has an opportunity to get a potential flipper, if Oliveira feels, pressured on this, and of course, some very important additional evidence.